before to continue, the first thing we will do is if you use Safari, you will have to enable the development mode, and this is normally in advanced, and there show develop menu in menu bar. So you have to enable this. If you use Safari, if you use Chrome, there's no issues because by default it's there. You don't have to enable anything. But on Safari, probably because they want to make the browser really simple, they don't have that option enabled by default. And then if I do Command Option U, I have this, which is the console terminal. So that's actually the inspection tools. And if I go to storage, you see local storage, make sure if you have any, because in my case, I just did a test before. So I will just remove all of them. So this one, I will remove that one. So everything is set 0 by default. And so now to use the local storage, the first thing we will do is to have a use effect. So use effect hook. Let's do this. So what is the use effect hook? It will be triggered every time. So I can actually show it to you. Use effect hook React. So every time we have with the hook, so every time the page is being rendered, it will be triggered. Is the same actually as so component and date update when you are using OOP with React like a class. Nowadays everybody is using functioning React with hooks instead, so it will be use effect, and then you will have to pass some parameters for optimization reasons. We will have here, so we'll just make it a little bit bigger. We'll say what state we have to trigger. Every time a state is being changed, we have to mention here the variable. So in our case, count. Every time count is changed, we trigger again the use effect hook. So otherwise, if you just leave with an empty array, it will never be code anymore once the page is being rendered. So that's good. If you have nothing there in use effect, you need to call again, but otherwise use effect is nice because it's like everything is in one scope. So that's why it's actually effect to prevent side effects. I don't know, yeah, they mentioned it here actually. Effect hook lets you perform side effects in your function component. So you will just wrap it in a use effect. You can have multiple use effect hooks as well in the same components. Usually for one thing, like in our case, if we have different things we have to change, we can have another use effect, like how many use effects in one component. The good thing with React is that the community is huge, so you always have a lot of different things. The patterns that alone depends on of the use case. You might have situation where you need to add event during, so like there they have different use effects. It depends, like here in this case that one they don't pass anything in the array, but here they have to trigger again adding listener. You see every time the property X is being changed, so that's why they have two different use effects, because that one will never be updated anymore, they won't trigger it anymore, and because the array is empty, and here every time X is changed. So in our case, we inside here we have count. Or I can just remove the arrays, but it's not really good for optimization because then use effect will be code all the time. Like basically every time something is changed, something is being updated, and in our case it's only when count is changed. So local storage, you can also use window, but you don't have to anymore. So just local storage, that's native API storage. There by default from the browser you have local storage and session storage, and here it will be set item, and the name will be we set, so here it will be count, for instance. That will be the name, and the value count. Perfect. And we can do, yeah, that will be fine actually, like this. I was thinking of like having a condition if count is greater, like higher than 0, but we don't have to. And then there I will have, here 0 will be different because the default value, it will depend of what we have in our local storage. So we might have a new function to make it clean. I will just show it to you without the function. So you can just write, you will have to format, so to have number, to make sure it's a number, because sometimes if there is no item, if local storage, if this one is not initiated yet, it will just return undefined. So you might have some issues later in the future. So this is why you need to have local storage like this, and then get item, and the name again item, like this. And after, so that will be the default state, count, sorry, and argument. Yeah, we make sure it's a number. Perfect. Let's refresh this. Let's see how it works. We have just a little issue. Oh yeah, here item, the name, it has to be count and not item. So now you see it's 3, it works. If I refresh, it knows the number. And if I do on Mac, Command Option U here, and if I go to storage, I see count 5. I can just reset this. And now let's make it a little bit cleaner. I will store the key const. It will be count key, key name, or could be like storage count key name, or just here, because we are just counting, we can just do storage key name. We don't have to use the snake, what's the name again, the snake uppercase. In my case, I would prefer to use the lower camel case, because at the moment the upper snake case with JavaScript is, no, that convention is not, it depends actually, but in our case, because the scope is only inside of our component, we usually is for global constants, but it's just a convention. Storage key name, I will do like this, and here storage key name, beautiful. And here, like I said, let's refactor that one, and let's create a new function. So to be const, we'll use a arrow function. The name will be default count value, maybe like this, and then it will return this. Because we just have one expression, we don't need curly brackets, and by default, if we just have one expression without the curly brackets, we don't need the return keyword. Otherwise, we need the return keyword, the return statement. But here, we just do this because it's one line, and so with the arrow function, the flat arrow function, so it's fat arrow functions, this one, perfect. You see, I don't know, for some reason sometimes it's fat arrow functions. And so default, yeah, that looks correct. I need 2 parentheses there, and now I can just reuse it, or maybe just we'll do get or retrieve, because we retrieve from the local storage like this, and here retrieve count value. Perfect. And here again, I think it's of the type argument type number is not assigned to, or set item needs a string by default. Here I don't use TypeScript, although I could. You see the type is a string. So I will just do string. Normally, yeah, that works. So I just cast to string type, and now I don't have any running anymore. So yeah, that's the problem with the string. It has to be a number here, otherwise it will just mess up the counting after when I increment +1, because obviously +1, it has to be an integer here. So what we will do here to be a string, and then here we will cast to a number +1, and so after it will cast back to a string, because when we increment, it's very important that we cast to a number. So we will have to do this way, although here we don't use TypeScript, so that's not an issue. But just to make it properly, like just to have it clean with the right type, let's do this. Now we have count is null, and yeah, that's another, and that's NaN. So NaN type, it's yeah, that's not a number. So yeah, that's always, let's do string here. I think the best will be, and here to be number. So we retrieve it, use state, then we increment, set count, and here we do add count. I will create a new function. Here we create a new function as well, add count, and then I will use set count. I cast to number, and then I have count here as a parameter and count here. This should work. Okay, here we are. So add count. Finally, add count, set count, perfect. And we can just move the use state above. So we just move that one, perfect, like this. Awesome. So that way it looks nice. And oh yeah, I just have, because retrieve, yeah, we just move that one higher. And then now, if the item is not found, if it doesn't find an item, if it's the first time, for instance, well, local storage will give a undefined value, because if it's the first time, there's nothing stored yet in the local storage, and we will get a NaN error, not a number. So we will have to do a case, a condition, so we can do or 0. So we cast to number, to an integer, if get item finds something, otherwise we'll just cast to 0. If this one returns undefined, it will give 0 as a value. And the other thing we will have to do, add count here, we will increment the number here, because that's in the argument, so it's not valid, so we have to do that logic here, +1. So set a number, oh sorry, yeah, set a number +1, so it will be like this, perfect. We set the number by incrementing the value count, and so here we can just do, it should just be count there, like this, add number, and so add number count, and here add count we have the argument, and then set count we cast count to an integer because there is a string, and then we do +1. Perfect, and this should be it. So let's see if I increment. Yeah, you see it works now, and we don't have any errors anymore because we casted this one as a string. So if it was a TypeScript file, so let's imagine if it wasn't a JSX but a TSX file, the compilation would be fine here because set item expect a string always as the value for the item for the local storage. That's fine, but because we have to increment a integer number, it won't work if it's a string because we won't be able to increment a string. It has to be an integer, a number, and this is why we cast here add count, or we can just do add number. It's the name doesn't really matter, and then we do set count, and so we set count to an integer, and then because it should be an integer, yes, here we still need to cast because the value of the item will be a string. So here we cast to a number what we receive from the local storage, and in case the local storage gives undefined null, we will be able to give a 0 if it's null. And so this is why we have a condition like this. We could also have done something like but obviously this takes way more time. I mean, not more time, but it's just much longer and much more complex. We could have done a ternary conditional operator. So ternary conditional operator. Oh, I don't have internet. I'll just turn on my internet. Lovely. Perfect. You see this one ternary operator, this conditional operator, well, we could have done this way, but then it would have been better to store this in a constant first, like we would have done probably stored number equals or stored count like this equals that, and then we would have done this way. But in our case, or we could, yeah, in our case it's much easier to use the OR operator. So this one. Perfect, lovely. So that's done. Once again, congratulations. And if you want to reset, you can just remove the local storage. Our key is count, but we can change it to awesome app, and you will see awesome app. And normally, should we start? I'm not too sure why it will still have count. I wonder why. I'll just go to the terminal and have a look. Maybe I have to restart the server, but normally it does always automatically. That's why the changes was done by default. Or maybe there's a cache from the browser. If I go to a private navigation, let's see. And now if I check the storage here, still count. Yeah, that's interesting. Apparently it doesn't like oh yes, it's because, sorry, my bad, of course, I haven't used a constant here. This is why it's so important to use a constant to store like the key name of a local storage. Otherwise you will end up with this kind of issues, and it will take quite a long time to debug. You see now we have awesome app key. So yeah, the final version then it's this one, but here you have to replace the storage key name. Perfect. And now you see if I remove this and this, I remove them, I have count, but if I have my other key and I save it and I remove both of them, it will automatically be my other key. Lovely.